Hello everyone and welcome to this mini course in 5 parts that is about JavaScript. It's an introductory course and I very glad to have you with us. Let's see if we can get after it and start with our intro presentation to get started. Now, my name is Thomas. On an everyday basis, I run a company called Craft Academy where I teach students the ins and outs of software development for the web, for the internet. I am the head coach at Craft Academy. I'm a programmer. I'm first and foremost a problem solver. That's what I see myself as because software is supposed to solve problems for individuals, for businesses, to make an impact on how we do business, how we entertain ourselves, and so on. And I think we can all agree that the internet has shaped the way we communicate, how we interact with each other, and so forth. And JavaScript is an integrated part of everything that touches upon web development. So more on that later. I build the things that you see on the screen. I do build front ends, but I also build the functionality that powers the front end applications that you interact with on an everyday basis. And I work with building functionality on that runs on the servers, interacts with databases, and so on. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and so forth. Now, during this course, as with many other courses that I run, we will work based on a 4-stage or 4-phase approach. I'm going to talk about a certain part of technology. I'm going to show you how it works. So I'm going to do coding demos. But we also want you to code along in all examples that we present here. And the fourth part is a part that is fully integrated in the agile approach, something that I adhere to in my everyday work, and that is the reflective part. I want you to take a step back and go through the things that we've learned from time to time in order to put them into a certain perspective to gain new insights of where we want to go based on where we've been before and what new things we want to learn as we move forward. Now, the prerequisites for this course is, of course, that you should have at least an intermediate knowledge about HTML and some basic knowledge of CSS and at least a very fundamental grasp of programming. Perhaps you tackled with it already, perhaps you know some other programming languages and so forth. It's not really necessary because we will cover all the basics. And first and foremost, what you should bring with you into this course is a desire to learn and to actually practice what we cover in this course. Also, it would be fantastic for us to know who you are. So in the chat or in the forums that will be made available for this course, please answer the 3 questions. Who are you? What do you do on an everyday basis? Are you a professional programmer or are you a hobbyist or so forth? But also, what do you want to get out of this and how can we accommodate you better? What are your goals with taking this course? That would be fantastic if you could provide us with that info. Now, let's talk a little bit about JavaScript. JavaScript is the programming language of the web. And with JavaScript, you can update, change both the look and feel of your HTML and CSS, the things that you are displaying to your users on the screen, but also it comes with all the functionality that many programming languages have. You can calculate, manipulate data, and so forth, right? So that is, but what makes it unique is that it has been created for the internet, for the World Wide Web, and it carries with it some functionality that many other programming languages do not have. And also, it's the only programming language that can be executed by your browsers without any plugins, so that being executed natively by the software that is displaying the web applications that you use. Now, let's back up a little bit though, because everything you see in your browser is based on these 3 technologies: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, HTML is an acronym. It stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and that is the foundation of everything you see on the web. It adds the structure and gives meaning to the content on a web page. An HTML tags handles everything from placing the images to displaying the text that you did on a web page, but also loads the supporting files like CSS and JavaScript to the page and renders them into what we refer to as the document object model, or DOM as it's abbreviated. And the good thing is that the threshold to start programming or writing HTML, because it's not really a programming language in any sense, but the threshold of actually writing HTML is very low. You can open up a notepad, and if you can create a text file, you can create an HTML file. The only thing you need to follow is some basic rules, and we'll get to that very soon. Now, without CSS or cascading style sheets, as what it stands for, a website would be aesthetically very boring. CSS can add colors of all kinds, fonts, and general layout to the website. You can also add animations and draw shapes and so on using CSS. We will not be covering much CSS in this course, but we will touch upon it slightly. And then, of course, there is JavaScript, which is, as mentioned before, the programming language that allows you to interact with everything that is displayed on the web page. Interact with it, change it, manipulate it, remove it, and so on. So while CSS adds style and layout to HTML, JavaScript adds interactivity and can make or help you make your website or web application more dynamic. Now, in order to follow along in this course, you will need a code editor. And as I mentioned before, you can get by with any notepad or whatever application you want to use to create text files. But we will be using an application from Microsoft, an open source version of an IDE that is called VS Code. And I will also go through some extensions that you might benefit from having installed. That will come in the second or third part of this mini course. And you can find VS Code on code.visualstudio.com. It's free to download, and it comes in versions for both Mac, Windows, and Linux. So you just pick and choose whatever version you want to download to fit your OS operating system. Now, what you see on the screen here is a very basic HTML file that uses a little bit of JavaScript. It's a very simple Hello World application. We will actually code that in just a second. You can see here, if you know some basic HTML, you can see that you have the doc type stating that this is an HTML page. You have a language encoder. You have two very important tags, one called head and the second called body. In the head tag, you have some basic meta tags or meta information about the web page, among them the title. We will not go through the meta tags at the moment, but they are fairly important. We will cover them later on in this course. And then you have the body tag. And the body tag is interesting because everything between the opening body tag and the closing one is going to be visible on the screen or on the page once this file has been rendered by the browser. And we're going to build a very simple Hello World application. And as you can see, we do not display any tags at all in this example, but rather have JavaScript create those tags for us and add some content to it. And I will go through this line by line once we start coding. So I would just suggest that we should get after it and start coding. So let's see here. We are here, and I am in my terminal window. Terminal window is a text-based interface that allows you to execute commands on your computer. And if you are not familiar with command line interfaces, you should get acquainted with that as soon as possible. But if you are, well, you can tag along and follow with me what I'm doing, what I'm coding. So I'm going to create a folder that I will name Hello World. And I do that with this command, mkdir hello world. And I'm going to cd into this folder. Now, what I want to do next is to create a file that I will name index.html, like this, and then open this. The content of the entire folder in my VS Code, and I have my extensions set up in my terminal, so I can just type code and then dot, and I will also pass in a flag called saying -r in order to open up this folder in the editor that I have already opened here in my on my screen. And so you can see here that we have an index.html page or index.html file open. I just click on it, and the interesting thing here is that now at this stage, having my VS Code set up the way I have it, I can now type HTML like this, and if you look closely, you can see that I have my my IDE suggests certain. I have a pop-up that suggests certain options to me, and if I now choose HTML:5, that will actually scaffold the very basic structure of my file. Let me make this a little bigger for you so you can tag along better. Now, we are supposed to build a very simple Hello World application or Hello World program and display the words Hello World on our screen without using HTML tags, but rather have JavaScript do it for us, which is of course a very trivial example and perhaps not the something you would do in real life, but nonetheless, what we want to do is to demonstrate what JavaScript can do for us. Now, as I mentioned, you can insert JavaScript directly into the HTML document by using the script tag. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And as you can see, my editor is configured, so whenever I open an HTML tag, it also creates a closing tag for me, which is a very good thing. It's something that you cannot achieve in Notepad, which an environment that you could use to build this little bit piece of software. In a professional IDE, as VS Code is, you get those little helpers that can enhance your productivity and hinder you basically from making mistakes. Now, I'm just going to type a little bit of code and then explain to you what it does. I'm going to create a new constant and call it new node, and that will use the document create element, and the element I want to create will be a simple div like this, and then I want to give a little bit of HTML to that new node, and that would be an h1 tag that says hello world, and then a closing tag like this. Now, since I'm adding this as a string, I do not get the usual helpers that I would get from my regular in my regular setup when I just code HTML. And the last thing I want to do is to say document body tag, because it's the body tag that is it's in focus for me at the moment. I want to append a node to that body tag. I want to append a child to that tag, and the node or element I want to append is the new node that I just created. So on line 13, we often speak in terms of lines of code. On line 13, I'm creating a new node or a new element on my document, and that is a div. And then as an inner HTML, or the HTML part of that node, I add an h1 that says hello world, and then finally I grab my body tag of my document and I append it. What I want to do now is to head over to my terminal and open this up in my browser, and we can see here that we have hello world being displayed on our screen. Now, in order to walk you through what actually happens, I will open up my developer tools in my Chrome editor like this, and I will go to sources, go to my index.html file, and I'm going to set something that we refer to as a breakpoint on line 13, and I'm going to reload this page. And what will happen now is that we will pause the execution of my program, and I have to my disposal two possible scenarios. I can either continue to run the program as it is, or I can step over to the next function call. And again, both click on this button here or press F10 on my keyboard should I want to do that. Now, if we take a closer look at line 13 at the moment, we see that we have stopped the execution here while we are creating the new node that is invoking the document create element. And if we just step over like this, we are jumping over to line 14, and behind the gray area that you see on the page where your on the part of the browser where your page will be normally displayed, you don't see anything yet because we haven't attached it. Line 15 has yet not been executed. So line 14 is actually modifying the node, adding the little bit of HTML to it that has been executed now that I clicked on the step over. And now that when I click that button again the last time, line 15 will be executed, and you should see hello world being displayed on the gray area like this. Now, so we are creating the new node, we're adding some HTML to it, and then appending it to the page by adding it to the body tag. And therefore, the hello world sign or text is being displayed on our page. We just witnessed the first usage of JavaScript, a very simple one. We built a hello world application, not much to show off to the world, but it is a start. Now, in the next section of this course, we will go over the very fundamentals of JavaScript as a programming language and focus on things like variables, constants, basic operators, comparisons, various data types that are to our disposal, and so on. And I hope to see you in the next part of this course, so we can take this journey together. Thank you very much for your attention, and remember to tune in to next section. And also, if you like what you're seeing, do subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much. So long.